Dr. Seuss delighted generations with whimsical rhymes and playful characters, yet Theodore Seuss Geisel's own life was far from a simple storybook. Behind the cat in the hat's bright pages lay hidden heartbreak, a secret affair, and troubling wartime propaganda. Join us as we uncover the deeper, often unsettling truths behind the beloved author's enduring fame. A humble start in Springfield. Theodore Seuss Geisel was born in Springfield, Massachusetts in 1904. His family owned a successful brewery, which provided a comfortable childhood, until Prohibition stopped their business in its tracks. Practically overnight, the family was forced to adapt to a world where breweries could no longer operate. Luckily, Ted's father had friends in local government, so they avoided outright financial ruin. Still, the sudden shift from prosperity to uncertainty left a mark on young Ted, who learned early on that life can upend itself without warning. While Ted's home life eventually stabilized, school was a minefield of prejudice. World War I fueled anti-German sentiment in the U.S., making kids with German heritage targets of suspicion. Ted endured name-calling and jabs about his German surname, experiences that isolated him from his peers. The cruelty he saw in other children may have later influenced his desire to entertain and teach empathy through playful tales. By the time Ted graduated high school, he was determined to pursue higher education. He enrolled at Dartmouth College, where he discovered a new outlet for his creativity, a campus humor magazine that would jumpstart his writing career. But a single mistake involving alcohol, right in the middle of Prohibition, almost ended his time at Dartmouth before it really began. Dartmouth Days and the birth of Seuss. At Dartmouth, Ted quickly joined the staff of the Jack-O-Lantern, a student-run humor magazine. His witty cartoons and comedic flair earned him the top spot as editor-in-chief. But Dartmouth, like the rest of the nation, wasn't joking about alcohol. Late one night, college authorities caught Ted and a group of friends in his dorm room, sharing gin against Prohibition rules. Punishment came swiftly. Ted was stripped of all extracurricular roles, including his beloved Jack-O-Lantern. For many students, that would have been the end of their involvement in campus publications. Ted, however, refused to walk away from writing. Instead, he adopted a secret pen name. Borrowing from his middle name, he signed his pieces Seuss. Over time, he toyed with variations like T. Seuss, quietly continuing to publish while evading the watchful eye of the dean. He wasn't fully aware of it then, but that pseudonym would outlive even his own real name. Upon graduating, Ted considered a career in academia. He headed to Oxford University to earn a PhD in English, though his future still seemed hazy. Little did he know, a chance meeting with a fellow American named Helen Palmer would change everything. She recognized a fiery creativity in Ted that transcended scholarly pursuits. If Ted had been veering toward a quiet life teaching literature, Helen believed he was destined for something far more imaginative. Helen Palmer, the inspiration behind the dream. Eager Helen Palmer was no casual acquaintance. From the moment she saw Ted's doodles, she realized he possessed a gift that could blossom into a serious career. Ted was still flirting with the idea of becoming an English professor, but Helen urged him to follow his passion for drawing strange creatures and writing playful verses. Eventually, Ted made the bold choice to abandon Oxford without finishing his doctorate. Returning to the United States, he submitted cartoons and humorous short pieces to magazines, hoping for any sign of approval. His big break came when the Saturday Evening Post paid him $25 for one of his cartoons. Not exactly a fortune, but enough to give him the confidence to move to New York City and seek full-time work in publishing. Helen stood firmly at his side, cheering him on. While Ted had begun signing his work as Seuss, there was still an element of formality he wanted to project, something that would help him stand out. Recalling his father's wish that he'd become a doctor, Ted decided to call himself Dr. Seuss. This playful, somewhat pretentious-sounding name clicked. Soon, his illustrations and comedic writing started appearing under the Dr. Seuss banner, turning heads with their originality. Helen and Ted married in 1927, forging not just a marriage but a partnership built on mutual ambition and creative synergy. Helen believed wholeheartedly in Ted's talent, and he looked to her for guidance and reassurance. Initially, everything seemed perfect. Then one unexpected stroke of luck would send Dr. Seuss flying into national consciousness. But not for children's books, at least not yet. It involved a product few would associate with the whimsical worlds of Whoville or Mulberry Street. Bug spray. Early career. Bug spray and breakthrough books. In the late 1920s, Dr. Seuss created a series of cartoons that mentioned Flit, a popular brand of bug spray. By pure chance, the wife of a key advertising executive saw his sketches and found them delightful. An offer quickly followed. Produce regular Flit ads featuring his signature comedic style. From that point, Quick Henry, the Flit, became a nationwide catchphrase, turning Seuss into an in-demand illustrator for ad campaigns. Strangely enough, bug spray ads became Dr. Seuss's gateway to larger success. His playful drawings and witty slogans connected with the public, establishing him as a creator whose whimsical imagination could also drive consumer demand. He wasn't rich overnight, but the steady flow of income provided Ted and Helen with a newfound sense of financial stability. They upgraded to a nicer home, traveled widely, and mingled with high society circles. During this period, Dr. Seuss dabbled in book publishing as well. He released odd little titles like Boners, which, despite the risque-sounding name, were simple humor compilations. These early works sold decently, but it wasn't until And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street that Dr. Seuss's potential as a children's author came into focus. The book's imaginative creatures and quirky perspective mirrored Helen's initial insight into Ted's true calling. Though multiple publishers rejected the manuscript, rejections numbered anywhere from 20 to 43, Seuss finally caught a break when he bumped into an old Dartmouth acquaintance who happened to be an editor at Vanguard Press. Despite moderate success with Mulberry Street, Dr. Seuss's career trajectory was about to be disrupted by a global conflict that would demand not just his comedic vision, but his ability to influence public opinion through art. World War II was looming, and Dr. Seuss's bold cartoons would soon divide audiences in ways his children's books never had. Wartime cartoons and moral complexities. As World War II escalated, Dr. Seuss shifted gears from whimsical worlds to political commentary. He created hundreds of cartoons championing Allied intervention. He criticized isolationists like Charles Lindbergh, urging Americans to acknowledge the threat posed by fascism. While some cartoons revealed Seuss's progressive leanings, especially regarding Jewish and African American communities, others showcased a troubling view of Japanese Americans. One particularly infamous cartoon depicted them lined up on the West Coast, awaiting explosive packages from Japan. This dichotomy in Dr. Seuss's wartime art is jarring. On one hand, he fought racism against certain groups. On the other, he fueled racist paranoia against Japanese Americans. Eventually, Ted enlisted in the U.S. Army's 1st Motion Picture Unit, producing propaganda films that supported the war effort. One documentary, Designed for Death, even won an Oscar, underscoring the power of media in shaping national attitudes. When the war ended, Dr. Seuss channeled his focus back into children's literature and creative pursuits. He and Helen relocated to California, perhaps craving a fresh environment after years of intense propaganda work. Nevertheless, a lingering cloud hung over his wartime legacy. How could a man who would later write stories about kindness and tolerance also perpetuate dangerous stereotypes? This question remains a complicated facet of Dr. Seuss's life, but it pales next to the personal tragedy soon to unfold within his marriage. 1950s success and hidden strains. The post-war years marked a fertile period for Dr. Seuss's writing. In the 1950s, he penned several classics that would shape the childhoods of millions. If I Ran the Zoo, Horton Hears a Who, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Each showcased his playful language, imaginative creatures, and underlying moral themes. Yet a seminal moment came in 1954 when Life magazine published a report on childhood literacy in the United States. It blamed dull reading materials for children's disinterest in books. Sensing an opportunity, one of Seuss's publishers handed him a list of 250 simple words every first grader should learn. The challenge was clear: craft a compelling, fun story using these words. Seuss delivered with The Cat in the Hat, transforming himself into a bona fide legend in children's literature. He refined this approach with green eggs and ham and one fish, two fish red, fish blue fish, helping countless kids discover the joy of reading. While Dr. Seuss's professional life soared, Helen's health began to deteriorate. She suffered from various ailments, though doctors struggled to pinpoint exact causes. Emotional strain likely played a role, given that she and Ted had grown distant. Fame had catapulted Ted into a constant cycle of public appearances and social events. Helen, already fragile, felt left behind in a whirlwind of celebrity that offered her little reprieve. Rumors circulated that Ted was growing close to another woman, but few took such talk seriously. After all, Helen had been the first to see his genius and to back him every step of the way. Behind closed doors, the situation was even more dire than most imagined. By the mid-1960s, Helen's illness worsened, and so did her suspicions that her husband's heart no longer belonged to her. Soon enough, the bleak reality of their crumbling marriage would overshadow every success Dr. Seuss achieved. Helen's tragic end and the exposure of betrayal. In 1967, Helen made a devastating choice. She offed herself. She left behind a note expressing how hopeless she felt, revealing that her physical suffering was only part of the pain she endured. She also alluded to the torment of seeing Ted emotionally drift away, possibly with another woman she once considered a friend. The note specifically said she felt trapped in a downward spiral, hearing failure echo from all corners. Most heartbreakingly, she spoke of her inability to imagine life without Ted. Helen's final message hinted at how her death would spark rumors, yet she took pains to protect Dr. Seuss's public image, telling him he could blame her fragile health for her drastic action. Some interpret this as an act of love. Others see it as a tragic reflection of her final wish to shield his reputation, even in her darkest hour. For Dr. Seuss, Helen's death was a punch to the gut. While he publicly mourned her passing, close friends whispered about the guilt he carried. He supposedly considered taking his own life or destroying the home they'd shared. But it was too late. His affair, long speculated upon, now stood in the open, linking him to a painful betrayal. Within a year of Helen's passing, Dr. Seuss stunned everyone again by marrying Audrey Diamond, an acquaintance from his social circle. The rapid transition from widower to newlywed outraged some and baffled others, cementing the idea that Helen's suspicions about his unfaithfulness were well-founded. Audrey, the second chapter, and controversy. Marrying Audrey Diamond so quickly after Helen's death created an immediate firestorm. Some of Dr. Seuss's most loyal friends and readers began questioning his moral character. Was the man who wrote about teaching children right from wrong a hypocrite in his personal relationships? He attempted to quell these rumors by writing letters to friends, insisting his choice wasn't a crazy impulse. Yet people struggled to reconcile the lighthearted Dr. Seuss of children's books with the individual whose actions had seemingly driven his first wife to despair. For her part, Audrey left her own life behind, family included, to be with Dr. Seuss. She had children, but once she became his wife, she sent them to boarding school, claiming neither Ted nor her daughters would be happy living together. This decision intensified the scandal. Had Dr. Seuss shattered one family only to encourage Audrey to distance herself from hers? Still, Ted and Audrey stayed together. Some described their relationship as a mutually beneficial arrangement. She provided constant support, enabling him to focus on his writing. He offered a secure, financially comfortable life and undeniable prestige. For years, the pair traveled, entertained friends in their La Jolla home, and presented a unified front to the public. Gradually, the gossip around Helen's death subsided, overshadowed by the continuing success of Dr. Seuss's books. Final years and a legacy of contrasts. As he aged, Dr. Seuss's health flagged. Glaucoma compromised his vision, making it challenging to create art with the detail and whimsy he had mastered. Audrey became his caretaker, helping him maintain a routine that still allowed for occasional bursts of creativity. Even with these limitations, Dr. Seuss continued revising old works and publishing new ones. Each release was greeted by enthusiastic readers, eager to plunge back into his fantastical realms. By the time he passed away from cancer in 1991, Dr. Seuss had become a national treasure. Fans remembered him for classics that taught children life lessons in the gentlest ways possible. Yet the revelations about his personal life lingered just under the surface. The racist wartime cartoons, Helen's tragic end, the affair that shattered a marriage. Some argue that his private missteps must be examined if we're to understand the full scope of his character. Others counter that the joy and literacy he spread overshadow any personal failings. One final twist concerns his name itself. According to Ted Geisel, Seuss actually rhymes with Zoe's, not Seuss. But the world at large never embraced this correction, a small testament to how public perception can override the facts. Dr. Seuss's image, for better or worse, was shaped by decades of colorful books and cuddly creatures. So much so that darker truths about the man behind them often go ignored. Dr. Seuss's life was as whimsical as it was heartbreaking. He revolutionized children's literature. Yet his bright book covers masked, deep personal betrayals and troubling propaganda. This duality reminds us that even beloved icons have shadows, and every playful rhyme can hide a darker truth. Thank you for reading. Please like and subscribe for more insights into the hidden sides of our cultural legends.